Welcome to a deep dive into the life and crimes of Mauricio Silva, American serial killer. He's currently on death row. We're using a Wikipedia article as our main source for this, so get ready. It's a pretty disturbing story.
It's more than just his crimes, though. It's a look at how personal tragedy and, well, society failing someone can lead to someone making these choices, the choices that shape their life.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with his early life. Born 1959 in Los Angeles. And honestly, rough from the start. Born with gigantism, a cleft palate, just a lot of physical challenges.
Right, and his mom also had gigantism and mental health issues, so, another layer of difficulty there.
Yeah, definitely not an easy start.
No.
His dad, he was a laborer. He wasn't really around much and then abandoned the family when Silva was young. He was later killed in Alaska. So no father figure for Silva and his brother. And then to make things worse, their mom. She left them with their grandmother in Mexico City. She was pursuing a relationship with another man.
And this wasn't a good situation. The grandmother, there are court records that show neglect. Like they were locked out of the house a lot. They had to find food on their own. At one point, they even ate a pumpkin just out of desperation, which, led to them being hospitalized for stomach infections. So that shows how bad it was. And these early experiences, being deprived like that, it can really mess someone up.
Definitely.
Yeah. Affects their behavior.
Yeah. So, not surprisingly, Silva ran away from his grandmother's. Ended up with a gang of homeless kids, just a kid himself, sniffing glue, scrounging for food, trying to survive. And he said that he saw a lot of sexual abuse going on with the other kids, but he was too scared to tell anyone.
Right, and that's where you see this mix of vulnerability and exposure to violence. Kids without a good support system, they're more likely to end up in those terrible situations. It's like one trauma after another, really hard to escape that cycle.
Definitely. It's like the system failed him over and over.
Yeah.
Silva struggled with things like writing, interacting with people, socially isolated on top of everything else.
And then everything changes when he commit his first murder at 18. He shot and killed someone he knew, Troy Allison Covella. We don't know exactly why they were arguing, but he shot him 9 times.
Wow.
So he goes from a life of hardship to a life of crime. It's a reminder that violence can grow out of tough times.
Yeah. He was charged with murder at first, but then took a plea deal. Voluntary manslaughter. Got 5 years and a fifth of a year at Soledad State Prison.
It makes you think, did that plea deal really give him what he deserved? Did it help him at all, or did it just make things worse in the long run?
I mean, did it help him address what led him to violence in the first place?
Right, or did prison just make him, harder and more likely to do it again when he got out?
That's a scary thought.
Yeah. And it doesn't end there. When Silva was released, it wasn't a new beginning. It was the start of something really terrible. A killing spree that took 3 more lives.
Right. Silva gets out of prison in May 1984, but it wasn't a fresh start. It was like the opposite. Just weeks later, he goes on this killing spree. 3 more people dead. First, Walter Sanders, he was only 16.
Yeah, so Silva meets this kid on a bus, and we don't know why, but he just shoots him 5 times with a shotgun. Then he dumps the body in the Antelope Valley. It's just cold. Like he didn't care at all.
It's terrifying how random violence could just end someone's life like that. And unfortunately, it wasn't over. Just 6 days later, he picks up Monique Hilton, another 16-year-old. At a bus stop on Santa Monica Boulevard, she was a runaway, came to Hollywood hoping to meet, get this, Michael Jackson. It's just so sad. This innocent kid.
Yeah, all that potential gone. Silva drives her out to a remote area near Palmdale and shoots her twice. And it makes you wonder, why these kids? Was he picking people he thought were easy targets?
It's awful to think about. And it gets even worse. His next victim was someone he knew, his own half-sister, Martha Kitzler.
And this was just 1 day after Monique. And this one, it was brutal. He strangled her, stabbed her 8 times, and then he slit her throat. It's like way more than just anger. It feels like, I don't know, some deep rage, maybe resentment or wanting to feel powerful.
So in just 10 days, he killed 3 people. Clearly, he was a huge danger. The police were closing in on him. But before they could catch him, Silva did something unexpected. He walks into a sheriff's department in Templeton and confesses.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Why would he do that? Was he feeling guilty? Or maybe he just wanted to get caught. Or maybe he was, I don't know, fascinated by the whole legal thing. Who knows? But it definitely started this huge legal battle.
Yeah, he said he wasn't guilty at first of all 3 murders. But they found a loaded, sawed-off shotgun in his truck and a knife.
And his lawyer, he tried to get a plea deal, life in prison without parole. But the district attorney, they wanted the death penalty. They said what Silva did was so bad, he deserved to die. It brings up that whole debate about capital punishment. When is it okay to kill someone, even for something this horrible?
Right. It's a big question. The first trial, it ended with a hung jury. They couldn't agree on a verdict. It shows that even with all the evidence, deciding if someone should die is a really hard choice.
It is, and the stakes were super high for Silva. But it didn't end there. They had a second trial, and this time the prosecution, they brought in some new stuff, made him look even worse.
Yeah, they said he might have raped Kitzler before killing her, and that he wanted to plead guilty and get executed as soon as possible. I mean, if that's true, it's just pure evil.
Yeah, the second trial, he is found guilty, all 3 counts, got the death penalty. But even then, it wasn't over. 2001, the California Supreme Court, they overturned it, said the prosecution got rid of a Latino juror unfairly, didn't give Silva a fair trial.
That's a big deal. Everyone deserves a fair trial, no matter who they are.
Exactly, but the death sentence, and they brought it back later, Silva ended up back on death row. And that's where he is now. But his story, it brings up some important stuff about justice, about how childhood can really mess you up, and about how complicated the law can be.
And what's crazy is Silva's been talking from death row, adding even more to this whole thing. So we're back, wrapping up our look at Mauricio Silva. We've gone through his tough childhood, how he turned to violence, and all the legal stuff. Now he's on death row. What's that like?
It's just imagine decades locked up, knowing they could execute you any day. It's got to do something to you. And Silva, he's actually said some surprising things from there.
You said he's been talking. What's he saying after all this time?
Well, he's admitted he's guilty in interviews and stuff, doesn't deny what he did. But get this, he's asking for his sentence to be changed to life in prison.
Really? Wouldn't he rather just, I don't know, get it over with, have an execution date?
You'd think so, right? But Silva, he says being alive in prison forever is worse than being executed. He says it's like this constant torture, knowing what he did.
Wow. It makes you think about the death penalty differently. Is it really the worst punishment? Or is a life sentence actually harder to deal with?
Exactly. And it makes you think about what it's like to be on death row, all alone, not knowing what's going to happen. Some people say that's cruel and unusual punishment in itself.
And Silva, he's not just sitting there. He's trying to change things, to make people think.
Yeah, and there's something else he keeps saying that's really important. He talks about how important it is to speak up about sexual abuse, especially for young people. He thinks if he had talked about what he saw as a kid, his life might have been different.
Like, he's trying to stop it from happening to other kids. He knows that staying silent, because he was scared, it might have led him down this path.
It's a powerful message, and it goes way beyond just him. It's like he's saying we all need to create a world where people who are abused, they feel safe to talk about it, where they can get help so they don't end up like him.
So this is the end of our look at Mauricio Silva. And there's no easy answers here. It's a story that shows how even the worst things people do, they often come from complicated pasts and society not helping them.
And the big question is, how do we stop this from happening again? How do we get to the root of violence and make sure the kids have what they need to grow up? Okay, those are questions we all got to think about, not just for this case, but for everyone.
If you want to learn more, there's tons of stuff out there about the justice system, the effects of childhood trauma, the death penalty debate. The more we know, the better we can make things. Thanks for listening.